Okay, welcome everyone. Very excited and happy to have a special guest. I mean, all of the guests are special on this series of Ask an Archer, but we have the man himself, Nusensei. If people have been living under a rock and don't know about him, they need to check him out on YouTube. He has a great following, an excellent YouTube site. I'm just going to actually, while we get you to introduce yourself, we're going to just kind of go through your YouTube site as well. But Nusensei, welcome. Thank you for giving us your time. And welcome to the, I guess, podcast, interview, whatever you want to call it, webinar.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
No worries. Okay. The name Nusensei, where does that come from?
So when I first made my channel, it was like a complete personal rebranding. Obviously, as a young person, you come up with these strange online names, and by that time I was a teacher, so I wanted to incorporate the word teach in some way. So the word sensei in Japanese means teacher, and it's used in a different way than just teacher. Teacher is kind of a very vague term. It's sensei, and teaching in Asian cultures in particular holds a high status. I think in Western society, sometimes teaching is kind of looked down upon. It's like if you can't do it, you teach it. So there's a low amount of respect in Western society. But in Eastern cultures, I'm Vietnamese personally, it's held in high regard. So and of course, most people know sensei as a martial arts teacher, but it means a lot of things. It's used for things like teaching, for doctors. So it's a high status name. So I want to incorporate that. As for the new part, that was a unique identifier. I wanted to have something which people just type in with two fingers or one finger, just type NU for misreferences. And it came from my last name, but more so that it came from the initials of my workplace. So my last name is Nguyen, or Nguyen in Vietnamese, which is impossible to spell pronounce for most people, Vietnamese. So rather than to make things hard for people, I wanted to have something which is unique, identifiable, something which is, people who follow me a lot, just type in NU and just know who they're talking about. And that came from a work initial. So my timetable code was NU. So I combined the word NU or Nu with the word Sensei, which is actually a pretty fair reflection of who I am and what I do.
Excellent. No, it's great. I think it's sometimes we try and oversimplify things or think too much about something, when really if we just make it very simple. Simple is best, right? Like they say in archery, keep it simple, stupid, I guess. Yeah, right. KISS. No, that's very interesting. And how about your just back to sensei. Sensei, can it also mean, I guess, in the more traditional areas, can it mean master or something like that as well?
Absolutely,
have that connotation?
Yeah. Absolutely. So, again, most people think of like martial arts masters, the people who've white hair, long beard, to sit under the waterfall for a long time. But the word sensei is someone who teaches, and a master is someone who teaches. I think it comes from the same root.
Right. Okay. Interesting. And that sensei, I mean, the idea of it, I think it's spread throughout the Far East, definitely from Japan, Korea, even some of the archipelago and Malaysia area. It all has that same connotation, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. And okay, how about your archery story? When did you start getting into archery, and how did that all begin?
So as a younger person, I never really had an interest in archery or sports in general. So I was a very bookish kind of person. So I loved reading, was obsessed with history. I was fortunate that my father, he's a reader, he's a scholar. Because when he came to Australia after the Vietnam War, he lost everything. So he went from being a very well-off, educated person. He came to Australia, he fled the war, and it was a factory worker and basically started from the bottom again. And something which never left him was his passion for learning. That really was what he passed on to me, among other things, but the main thing is the passion for learning. So for me, reading a lot about history was what connected me the most with being a teacher, just be connected with the world and the world's history. So when it came to archery, like I said, I had no previous interest in archery, apart from playing video games and just,
Sure.
playing the archer character sometimes.
Right.
But the thing which got to me was like, it's pretty random. I think a lot of the things I do with archery on YouTube and everything else, it was quite fortuitous. Sometimes the stars align in certain ways. And
Sure.
it was a random invitation. Like my friend, he said, like, David, there's an archery club next to your workplace. Like, no, there isn't. I would know. I've been working there for 4 years.
Right.
There is. Look, there is. Like, there was. I didn't. I never passed it because,
Right.
like, one thing we always told from people who come to our club was that they didn't know we existed, and well, I didn't know we existed either until after being there for 8 years. So I tried it once. And it's the sort of thing where you just fall in love with it right away.
Absolutely.
And the initial feeling, like the first shot was really exciting. It's kind of like,
Sure.
it just feels so complicated the first time around. Like, where do you hold the bow? Where do you hold the arrow? What do you do exactly? It looks easy. You watch TV, watch movies.
Right.
It looks really easy, just like a pew, 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 pew.
Yeah.
But you're like, when you just start being overwhelmed with all these different steps, and some people pick it up really quickly. But I think most people, they imagine, they visualize it's easy, but it's not. And the first time I did it, I'm like, okay. And something which is quite subtle, we might bring it up later again, I think a question might come across, is that my teacher, my coach or the instructor at the time, he didn't overly praise me. I'm not the sort of person, I like praise like everybody else does.
Sure.
But I'm the sort of person who is motivated intrinsically. I have that internal factor. I'm more introspective.
Right.
So I didn't feel it was a great shot. And he never told me it was a great shot. And it didn't matter that landing the gold or the bullseye or whatever. Like, it didn't matter where it landed. He always said, it doesn't matter where it lands. It's about the process. And that was planned from day one. Day one, he said, it's all about process. So knowing that and being that being the first taste of archery, I kept on wanting to learn what a perfect shot would feel like, or at least what a good shot would feel like. And he always hold it from me. He couldn't tell me. I don't think we any way tell other people what a good shot feels like. Everyone will feel it differently.
Right.
So that's what got me into archery. Was like after day one, I wanted to find out more about archery. So I wanted to do it again. I wanted to get the feeling again. So I know the buzz you get. It's like, oh yeah, that felt good today. Can do it better next time. Can do it better next time. And that self-motivation was something unique for archery, because archery is not. It's not a team sport, for one. All right, I've never been involved with team sports. I mean, I've played team sports, but team sports, as silly as it sounds, it relies on other people. So, like, whether you win or lose depends on what other people do. So you have an influence, but it depends on what your teammates do. It depends on what the other team does, and even for individual sport, that's like tennis. Yeah, that's still it's an opposing match. So your opponent has influence on what you do. And these things didn't sit well with me. As an athlete, as a competitor, as someone who's self-driven, I didn't want my success or failure to depend on somebody else. Sure. And that I think is a very strong motivation for many archers, is controlling your own fate. And I knew that archery was something which every mistake was something I had to own. That was all me. I can't blame the coach or the weather or the person next to me.
Yeah.
Whether I miss or not is me. And that's something which, it was a very heavy burden, because we love blaming other things, but that's what really motivated me to stick with archery, was that mastery of self and that pathway, the archer's pathway, the archer's journey to achieving. It's like, this is the philosophical meaning of the archer's paradox. You strive towards the perfect shot. There is no such thing as the perfect shot.
Right. Well, that's it. Like you said, it's very interesting that, you know, your coach said to you, it's not the shot, it's the process. And that is something that takes people many years to realize. And the fact that he told that to you literally on the first shot was, you know, he did you a great service there, because many people go through, like you say, trying to find that perfect shot, which doesn't always exist. I mean, how many times has someone shot an arrow which really felt great, but it didn't necessarily hit the bullseye? And how many times have we shot the bullseye and it hasn't felt correct? So, you know, it begs the question, you know, what is the perfect shot? Does it mean that it hits the bullseye, or is it how you feel during the shot, for example? I mean, like you say, it's a big philosophical question. It does lead to why many people like the fact that, you know, archery questions themselves. It becomes very introspective. Some people take it to the level of, you know, it's a meditation thing. It's very spiritual. What was it ever like that for you, or is it like that for you now? Is it always been a sport, or does it take kind of the role of more of like a discipline and I guess a way of life?
I think for me, I'm more suited, and I need the discipline more in my life. I was recently talking to a coach on a live stream, and what he said was, "What you need to do the most is what you're not doing now," and that applies to a lot of things. So for me, I don't spend enough time, you know, meditating. I don't spend enough time feeling centered. So that's self-control. I do archery. My primary discipline is sport, but that's not why I do archery. That's kind of like a side thing. So that's why I don't compete a lot. That's why Olympic recurve is what I find I do, because that I was trained to do so. But I find myself doing more traditional shooting because that's like more about going through the motions and, you know, feeling. It's like feeling the enjoyment of shooting. So an example is like today, like our club's open for the first time. We were starting to ease the restrictions, and our club and most archery clubs are starting to reopen slowly. But I chose not to go back. One, because I'm talking to you, but secondly, I don't feel like it. Like I don't feel the hunger to go and get back to a competition mindset, because for the last like 50 days, I've been cycling through every traditional bow I have, and that's the feeling, because otherwise I'm scoring for points. I'm trying to refine a process, which in itself is a viable pursuit. But, you know, I find traditional archery is what suits me best. So the discipline of continually shooting, of reflecting the shot, of not blaming the equipment and not really, you know, artificially setting goals, but just to get that feeling of enjoyment and peace. That's what I feel is most important. And for me, I'm the sort of person who, many people do archery to calm down and have a stressful day at work, so they shoot and they relax. For me, I work a stressful job. I'm a teacher. It's not an easy job. It's very emotionally draining. And I find often my
what age
archery
do you
practice
teach?
is disrupted. I teach high school, so year 7 to 11. That's about 12 to 18 years old. Like I was saying before, it's very emotionally draining, and often I don't train, I don't practice because I've had a very tiring day. These are all easy excuses, but it's hard to remove yourself from an emotional environment and then come to an environment where you're meant to be calm. So for me, I need to be relaxed and calm to enjoy archery. I don't find archery to be a calming factor, unlike I think most people who do it. So that's kind of where I feel archery is a role for me. It's like something which I only do when I'm feeling good about myself.
Right. Yeah, I guess you have to be in the right mindset to be able to, you know, get up off your backside, get the equipment, get everything strung up, get out onto the line and start shooting. I mean, some would say that, you know, even on bad days when you don't want to shoot, sometimes that's when people shoot best as well. It's a kind of a weird psychological thing because, you know, again, many times, you know, I've gone to shoot and I'm really hyped up and everything, but the shots are just not going where I want them to go. And on other days when I'm not necessarily super focused or really, in a way, I'm kind of daydreaming a little bit, but as I'm shooting, I'm not, you know, trying, if you know what I mean. I'm not forcing anything. I'm just letting it shoot. I don't really care where it goes, but it just happens to just shoot really well. So in the beginning, did you start off with, like, as I guess most people do, maybe at a club, Olympic recurve, and then you moved onto traditional?
Absolutely. So, we all started with a traditional bear bow. It's all the beginner bows are the same, which I'm sure you know as well. So it's a typical wooden takedown recurve. Our club had really old ones and that sort of thing. So, we started with that, and the club, being a modern sporting club, pushed people towards the modern archery, because that's what the club is. I think a lot of people misunderstand what clubs are, and that's something which I talk about sometimes on my channel. Is people imagine like archery is. But imagine archery is like one kind of archery, one style. Right. So they imagine you can go to a club and learn to shoot like Robin Hood, or learn to shoot like Genghis Khan, or learn to shoot like a samurai, rather than shoot Olympic archery. But they don't understand that an archery club, I mean, it's almost like we don't really name the club Olympic Archery Club or Target Archery Club. Sometimes they do, but most of the time it's like something archery club.
Right.
So it doesn't really indicate what kind of club it is. So whether it's like Southern Cross Archery Club or Maiden Archery Club, there's no distinguishing factor. It depends what the logo is. So that's you have to kind of read into it a bit more.
It's a bit of a guessing game sometimes.
Exactly. So people imagine they come in wanting to do one kind of archery, and they get showed another, and it's like you shouldn't judge this, by the way. And I always tell people, don't just say, "Oh, it's too colorful, it's too modern, I don't like it." A lot of people who come in thinking, "I'm going to shoot like Robin Hood," shoot a modern bow, maybe a compound bow or a modern recurve bow, and they actually really enjoy it. And they find more reasons to enjoy archery rather than narrow down and tunnel vision on, I want to do this kind of archery. So a lot of people think, all right, I want to shoot English longbow, because that's what I learned at school. That's what I watched in movies. English longbow, that's real archery. Or maybe then more recently, they watch YouTube, they watch like viral videos like Lars Anderson. I want to shoot like Lars Anderson, and then narrow down the one reason to do archery. I mean, it's good to get into it. By the way, every reason to get into archery is a good reason. But don't just narrow down all your options to just one thing which you've seen and you think that's what archery is. I think that's where a lot of the tension sometimes between people who do archery and people who don't sometimes lie. It's when people think archery is one thing, whereas people who practice archery see it as multiple things. So for me, like I said before, my origin was Olympic archery. So that was the pathway. Honestly, it never really sat well with me because it didn't match what I thought archery would be, like I said before. I grew to become proficient in it. I didn't really compete much, so I'm not a good archer. I'm pretty much an average archer. But that's how I started with the Olympic pathway. And since then, I've progressed down that pathway. It's like a pathway you never knew you could go down. So I started as an athlete, and then went down more coaching. I've worked with high-level coaches, and that's what I mostly do these days is coaching. But once I, had more time to explore other styles, I had the chance to try traditional Western archery, especially through my channel, because a lot of people are not Olympic archers, so they want to find out more about other styles of archery. So I started with traditional archery, then as the opportunity came, Asiatic archery, and I find that these styles are more in line with what I enjoyed, what kind of like the original reason why I want to do archery. Not so much to be like Robin Hood, but it shoots simple, shoot basic, nothing too complicated. It's all about the person. And I find Olympic recurve was the best kind of blend between modern competitive shooting, but also to you. Compound is a bit too much mechanical for me. I'm saying I can't shoot compound, I won't shoot compound, but that to me is a bit too much the bow. So I see people who shoot compound and they'll shoot one arrow, they'll spend the next half an hour like unscrewing things and tightening things, and I think that's a strange way of archery. I know why people do it. So I don't sledge compounds. We know why it's done, but to me, it's kind of like I want to spend more time shooting. So there's traditional, there's compound, and Olympic recurve. It's not mechanical to the point where you're shooting like a bow and shoot itself. It's still very much you. It's just that there's more weight to it. It's more balance of sight, but it's still pretty much you which drives the shot. So that's why I started Olympic rather than compound. But like I said before, I tend to drift more towards the traditional in the spectrum personally.
Yeah. What around what year did you kind of start your archery journey, or did you join?
So I did it's about 8 years now, over 8.5 years now.
Excellent. Just back to your background, is there you have to excuse my ignorance, but is there a history of archery in Vietnam, and do they have a tradition there of archery?
Yes. Unfortunately, Vietnam, I knew you asked this question, so I tried to research this before you got here. Because the problem is that we have a history, but it's not like widely known or documented. Like we talk about, all the traditional styles. Think about like Japan, Korea, Mongolia, China. And you might think, Vietnam's kind of like southern China, right? It's kind of no, it's not. They don't ever say that.
Okay. So I didn't say that, by the way.
Yeah, no, it's like we assume because we get so much of our culture and our systems from China anyway.
Right.
But archery is something which like depends how far back you go. I think the newer or the later eras of historical Vietnamese archery were more influenced by the Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
But earlier on, it's more like it's more probably has more in common with places like Malaysia or Cambodia.
Right.
So we have an archery culture, and we definitely have stories of archery and legends and myths like most cultures do.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been well researched. Even in Vietnam itself, there's been little research on the history of Vietnamese archery. So we have one. Do most people know about it? Not really. So exactly what people use, the bows they would use, the techniques they would use, we don't know much at all. I don't think much is written down.
Right.
I do know. I follow like forums like ATAR, and I know
Yeah.
some people there have been sharing resources. Which I can read, funny enough. So like, hey, that's my own culture. I get this. But because it's so unknown, because I live in Australia, so I don't have that strong connection with Vietnam originally. So I find, and even Australia doesn't have an archery culture. I mean, it's one of the few places where archery was not developed. The only continent where archery wasn't widespread. So like culturally and traditionally, there's no connection have to traditional archery here in Australia or my own culture in Vietnam.
Two quick questions. When did you move from Vietnam to Australia? First,
I was born in Australia.
Oh, you were born there. Okay, so your father had traveled before that. Okay, and in terms of, I mean, this is a question I spoke with Ahmed a couple of days ago, and we were talking about this in terms of many civilizations, many countries today have, you know, their native or Aboriginal people do have a link or it features archery. Is that not the same with the Aborigines in Australia? Do they not use a bow and arrow? Do they have a culture with bow and arrow?
Yeah, so like I said before, like the Australian Aboriginal Australian history is quite unique in that they never used. I would say never used, but I think like it was partly brought over from the Polynesian islands, or at least like where Papua New Guinea is. So from Indonesia downwards, there was some trading with the northern nations, the very tip of what's now Queensland. But for most of Australia, the bow wasn't used.
Interesting.
One of the theories, I mean, the theory one, the lack of appropriate woods. But the bigger theory is that the animals in Australia, as we know from our pop culture and memes, there are massive animals in Australia. They're huge. They all want to kill you. So I think like back then, especially in the traditional historical days, we had a lot more megafauna. So the people living in Australia were hunting huge creatures like kangaroos, emus, which didn't need a bow and arrow, they needed a spear. So most of the First Nations, the Aboriginal peoples of Australia's, had a strong spear culture rather than a bow culture. That might explain why there was a much lower prevalence of archery in Australia.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I can see that. Okay, so you mentioned you're a high school teacher from Monday to Friday. So I mean, from the amount of content you put out on your site, one would have thought that it's like a full-time thing for you, but you probably have you probably use all the extra hours that you have to kind of record and edit and what stuff, and you know the stuff you do is really good, high quality. So how often do you record your content, and how regularly do you try and put stuff out as well?
I guess my general rule is when I can and when I feel like it. I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind. So I always remember YouTube's a side gig. It's meant to be a creative project. It's a creative outlet. So I don't really see that as a commitment. I mean, early on, I wanted to get out as many things as possible. So, like, you know, if I see something missing, I'll make it and have more time to do so. More recently, I've had more time. I've had more duties take over. So things like coaching and personal training, those kind of take more precedence. And the way I say it is that I've got a set amount of, let's say, archery time. So there's work time and there's archery time. And archery time could be anything. It could be training, coaching, go to competitions, or making YouTube videos. So it's kind of like at that point in time, what is the priority? What do I need to do the most? Do I need to train? I'll go and train, which means I won't bring my camera, because I think like the problem with having over 24 hours in a day is that whatever time you invest in something, you can't take it back. You can't do something else.
Right.
So if I film a video today, for example, that means I'm not training. So
Correct.
it depends on my priorities. If I need to train a lot more, then I'll slow down my routine. I normally try to do at least once a week. But obviously it depends on what I want to do. And again, especially now with the club running with restricted hours and more people want to coach from me, I deprioritize the videos because that's not the most important thing.
Sure.
That's there's a resource for people around the world that's meant to be there for long-term interest. So when I have downtime, I make a video, or if it's something that's relevant enough, I'll prioritize that and make that as soon as possible.
Right.
Often I find, because fortunately for me, my club is right next to my workplace. So I can always go after work and train there or practice there or film a video. Otherwise, it used to be at weekends, but now people train on weekends. I don't have time to do so.
Sure.
So yeah, it's often when I can. Usually during the summer months when there's more daylight, I have more time to film things. Whereas now it's the approach of winter, then it's less daylight and it's less less opportunity to do so.
Sure.
So I tend to get quiet more during this time. But yeah, it depends on what I feel like. If it's important enough for me to talk about and I'm passionate enough, then I'll do it. And very often I might find that I have a topic which I'm interested in to begin with. I script it, I research it, and then by the time I finish it, I'm like, I don't feel like it anymore. It just sits there for a while and I forget about it. And it is quite a process. It is a lot of time dedicated. I've got like thousands of videos now, so that's.
I know it's the amount of content is great. I mean, so I'm just sharing my screen with the viewers who can see this. So just in case anyone hasn't been to his site, this is the where you can find it. So you've got a good range of different playlists and stuff like that. You've got your Olympic recurve section, and I want to come on to your meeting with Kisik Lee in a bit. You've got your Asiatic archery videos, the Kudo, all your horse bows, your archery history, the bow reviews, the archery equipment, pop shots. I mean, there's so many stuff going on. All of the equipment that you are reviewing or using, where do you source this from, and is it your own collection? Like, do you have like a garage full of this stuff or what?
The answer is yes for the garage. I've got when the isolation started, I was thinking, well, what can I do? And I thought, well, this would be a great time to cycle through my inventory because I don't know how many bows I have and which ones I have and don't have anymore. So I had to like dig through all my. I don't have a wall, unfortunately, so I have no room dedicated to archery because I share my house with my father. So it's all like stuck on a desk and it's buried under a cloth or something. It's still disrespectful, but unfortunate. But can't do much when having a space. And I finally made a whole list. I made a whole spreadsheet of everything I have, draw away the brands, and which video comes in. And what about like 41 bows at the moment, and counting. It goes upwards. So. I've seen people with more bows. I've been to Ahmed house, so he's got like a whole wall of bows. So I thought, okay, he's got more bows than I do, but he's a seller, so it's probably most of these sells off. Are
these bows that you've just collected over time, and you just thought, right, I have to do inventory now?
Yeah, pretty much. And I think for moving forward, like every time we go into a bow, I should write it down to know what it is. So people are like, hey, do you have that bow? I'm like, do I? I'll check it out, so I can know what to look forward to. And most people who watch me, they have favorite bows. They would like watching me shoot. So having a list actually helped my views quite a bit because they didn't realize I was a certain bow. Because people come in different times. Some people have been from the very beginning. Some people have been just joining like the last few days. So they haven't seen the full inventory. So most of my bows, I started by reviewing bows, which I personally, actually, I didn't own the bow first. So I started off by reviewing other people's bows. So I kind of borrowed them, just kind of, hey, I've coached you for like a day. So why don't I borrow your bow for a bit to, tune or to clean up? And I do a review of it like overnight. So it's kind of a weird thing first. So the first few reviews were my own bows. And then as I started doing reviews, more companies, so shops and manufacturers started getting in touch with me to send me samples of their bows. So yeah, I think I've got about probably 1/4 of my bows I've bought myself, either because they're my own bows or I personally wanted them. About probably 3/4 bows which have been sent to me to sample, to spotlight, and to feature.
Great. No, that's excellent. That's good to know. All right, moving on to you said you're a coach now. How does coaching levels work in Australia? So here in the UK, you have your basic instructor entry level, which, you know, if you're a scout leader, if you're a normal teacher, whatever, you can do that, and you can safely take a group to do archery. And then they have basically kind of like a level 1, 2, and 3. Level 3 is where you get to what we call county coach. And then after 3, it would become like, you get to like national coach, and then it goes maybe to like Olympic level. Is it similar in Australia, or is it a little bit different? And where are you at on that scale?
It's pretty similar. So it's been a little confusing because we've been mixing up some of the systems, and we've changed the system again like this year.
Right.
So to try to build more consistency and more support for coaches. It's changed now. I used to think it was like level 1, level 2, level 4.
Right.
And that corresponded to the actual name. So like the level 1 is the instructor role. The instructor is the person who runs the come and try programs.
Yeah.
So they qualify to run beginner programs, teach people how to shoot. The level 2 club coach is it's club coach. So they're the ones who have more understanding of sports science and process. And tuning equipment. Level 3 it used to be the regional coach, which probably counter level for you.
Yeah.
And then level 4 would be high performance or national coach.
Right.
So they kind of changed the numbers around a few times, and now officially it's level 1, 2, 3, and 4. But we kind of intermingled that with like instructor, club coach, regional, and high performance. But yeah, there wasn't really much of a pathway when I started doing coaching, and it's only now they're starting to get a more national system consistently across the board. But I'd be a club coach or level 2 in Australia, which might be level 2 or 3 somewhere else.
Right. Excellent. Tell us about this seminar you went to, the KSL one, and in case people haven't seen it yet, and you're meeting with the man himself, Kisik Lee.
So Kisik Lee, for those who don't know, is one of the most successful and well-known Olympic coaches. So he's a Korean coach. He was a Korean coach for many years. He was the Australian national coach for many years, and he was responsible for winning Australia's first gold medal in the Olympics.
Right.
And it's been the national American coach for the last like 8 years or so.
Yeah.
And this year or last year, he was awarded the 2019 Olympic Coach of the Year. The first time Olympic coach for archery has been given that award. So he has perhaps the most successful track record of finals appearances and medals in the world.
Sure.
So he's been a very big part of modernizing the approach to archery. And funny enough, because he draws a lot upon traditional archery as a reference, as inspiration. Right. Because one of the things that I've definitely heard of many traditional archers. Justin Ma, for example, references modern archery. I know Mihai Cosme references Kisik Lee, and Kisik Lee references Korean traditional archery. So it's a very interesting baseline, because in the end, most archery comes from the same structure, the same process, but it's articulated in different ways.
Right.
I've discussed it with other people too, where traditional archery through traditional texts explains it in a way which makes sense to people at the time. So we incorporate spirituality, we incorporate mental processes to help us go through the pacing of a shot, whereas Kisik Lee in the modern times uses that, but uses science and anatomy to explain that. So we're speaking like the same thing, but a different language. Anyway, so Kisik Lee was someone, I read his book when I started, and at the time I didn't really know. I knew the terminology, just not what it meant. And the way Coach Lee explained it was like, there's software and there's hardware. Hardware is the physical process, whereas software is a set of instructions that you follow. And I think this actually aligned with what many artists do. They see the physical process, so they have the hardware. It's like you have the car or the computer, but you don't know how to use it. So people will kind of figure out, and they find a way to use it, not to the
trial
best
and error,
optimal level. Exactly. So it works for them. And what Coach Lee and in any system really is to remove the trial and error and make it more consistent, because it's not just coaching for one person to shoot well, but a consistent, repeatable process that it can be taught to many people. And that was the basis of his system, the KSL system. It's a particular shot process,
Right.
which is articulated and defined in a way which, for what Coach Lee does, provides the most consistent results for more people. Not everyone uses it, and not every nation uses it. A lot of people should very well. And we don't ever want to say, don't do this style or don't do this process, because that's not right. We don't want to shut down other styles.
Right.
But what Coach Lee tried to do was to create a system which can be taught at all levels, from junior level, beginner level, to elite, national, international level. And that's what he built up. So he came across my videos, as a lot of people do. I've reviewed some of his products and his book. I've been in touch with his co-authors before that. So he personally contacted me last year and invited me to come to his seminar. So he runs seminars in Europe, and he runs one in Australia. And he invited me last year, and partly because he liked what I do, he loves what I do, but also because he wanted to spread his message a lot more. So obviously he's very well connected at the archery level, but for the public face, I mean, archery itself has a very small public profile. The Olympics happen, and then people know about it and love it, and then they fade off, and people don't really look it up anymore. And then a movie comes out like the Avengers or Lord of the Rings, and people get really into it, and then it fades off. So, what I do, and my unique role in all of this, is that I'm a very public front. So people on YouTube always see me, they'll find me, and he wanted to be part of that. He wanted me to be part of his journey, and he wanted to be part of my journey. So like when I teach more Olympic archery, then I can use more of the language, more of the the processes which he's understood well, and to help spread the good word and the positive messages. But it wasn't. One thing that's really important was that it wasn't like a negative thing. It wasn't like, you're doing it wrong, I'm going to teach you how to do it right. It was more like, I want to support you, and I want you to benefit from it. I want everyone else to benefit from it. So, and that's what I find. Sometimes in any sport, there's cliques and people get really nasty about each other. I've definitely heard nasty things about Coach Lee, and people post it and say it, and it's like, well, wow, why so bitter? And like, I have no reason to dislike him. People dislike him because, oh, he messed me up and I did it wrong, so it's his fault, and they get really nasty sometimes. But for him, he's like a really nice teacher. He's like my father in many ways, but like physically, but also he's like I guess as an Asian personality, I see where he's coming from too. He's working with a lot of Western cultures in America and Australia, so maybe there might be a cultural offset, and maybe there might be a language barrier. But I found that he's very supportive, very genuine. He's not like selling his style as the only best style. He recognizes differences. I mean, obviously he'll push his method as the best method to approach archery. That, of course, he made it, so he'll push it. But I never felt like he was trying to take down other people as much. It's more like helping build people up. So that was my experience with Coach Lee. The seminar was very eye-opening. It's like, I had the hardware, but not the drivers. So I finally installed the drivers. I went, oh, I get it now. So we kind of imagining these things the wrong way. So we use words like transfer, holding, expansion, which, at face level, expansion means you can open up and stretch out. Holding means you hold it there, but it's a bit more than that. And archery is a lot of nuances. There's all styles and disciplines, a lot of nuances. So having been taught the process himself through Coach Lee, I've got a much clearer understanding of what an efficient shot process should be. So that was a week-long seminar. It was one of the career highlights, I think.
Definitely.
Won the honor. It was definitely an honor to meet Coach Lee. But also
firstly, for him to contact you rather than
exactly,
him.
So I remember when he said, hi David, it's an honor to talk to you. I'm like, no, it's an honor to talk to you.
Excellent. No, he seems like a very, very friendly, cooperative guy, and how a coach should be. I was listening to some of the videos with Jake Kaminsky, who I think he worked with as well. I think during their training program, he probably has to put his kind of the cap on, where he's got to be a lot more strict and disciplined with them, especially with the top athlete Olympic level archers. If they do something wrong, you've got to do it again and do it again until you get it right. So he's probably somewhat of a perfectionist, but I mean, that's the way he's got to the level that he's got. And like you say, many people have probably either rubbed him up the wrong way, or they don't like him for whatever reason. But I think generally that's because they feel they didn't benefit as much as they should have. And I think a
on
lot of
that
the time
note,
is because
one
people
thing
don't listen.
Yeah, well, one thing that's really quite important is that like the way archery works as a sport is that it's different from most other sports where you learn first from a coach. It's
Right.
like I was talking to again last live stream with Jared Grachus. We talked about the boxing analogy, where as a novice you don't go and box in a ring right away. Like
Right.
you learn the basics. You condition first. You learn the basics first. You don't spar till like months later.
Correct.
So we have an understanding where the relationship between the coach and the student is something which is always respected. And as you meet different coaches, I mean, a lot of the elite athletes use the same coach they've had since they started. It might be the parent, the dad, for example, in tennis. Definitely a lot of relations with that. But the point is that like you maintain a strong relationship with the coach, because the coach is responsible for teaching you how to do it in the first place and how to do it well and improve. And that's something which is never lost. Archery is a little different, where most people learn by themselves. Now, even with an instructor or a coach, most people figure out a method by themselves. So in a way, we make archery a little too easy. I'm sure as you know as instructor as well, like we often, especially nowadays, we put the bow in their hand and we teach you how to use it within like 20 minutes or half an hour.
Correct.
And they can, especially with a close target, they can hit it right away.
Yeah.
So there's immediate gratification. And people will think that, oh, archery's pretty easy. I can just keep on doing this.
I've got it now. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got it now. There's no challenge. I just keep on shooting it, and it's more the hobby or the activity mindset. It's kind of like you play mini golf. Like, oh yeah, I just tap the ball, it goes in a hole, and there's no like skill driver. There's no motivation to improve.
Yeah.
So people often will come, and the people who do archery will dedicate themselves to archery, but they go through many coaches. They spend a lot of time figuring things out on their own. And in very few cases are there national systems which teach the same process from the entry level to the top level. Yeah. So what happens with many athletes is that they've learned their own method and they've done really well with it. And they reached like the top level, like national level or national coaching, and the system taught there is completely different than how they learned.
Right.
So there's more chance of conflict and incompatibility between what one coach teaches and what another coach teaches. I think there are two extremes. I've seen these two extremes. One is when you have a coaching system or a coach who dictates what must be done. So it doesn't matter what you've done before, you must do it my way. That's one extreme end. The other extreme end is, well, you've been this good with your current method. I'm not going to touch it at all. Just do your thing. That's really, really tough to work with. Now, the solution or a solution is it's tough, but is have a coach. It's been exposed to multiple styles. So they've worked with enough archers to know how to make one particular archer shoot one particular way, push themselves past the barriers, regardless of what style they've learned. If you know the KSL method, you can talk that language and refine their approach to KSL. Or they've learned from a Korean method, so you can perhaps help them with their Korean process and mindset. But very few people have that education and widespread knowledge. So that's why I feel like people misunderstand and people will take down other styles or think, oh yeah, this doesn't work for this person, therefore it's a bad style. But it's more of a holistic sense of archery. And that's an ideal to know every style. But the more you know, the wider your lens, then the more you can see. And I think that's what comes down to archery in general.
Absolutely. No, that's right. I mean, like everyone that begins out, it's funny. They say that the less a person knows, the more argumentative they are. But the more you know, the more you can accommodate different positions and different attitudes and different perspectives. Whereas in the beginning, someone who's done archery for maybe a couple of weeks, couple of months, they think they've cracked it. But then someone wants to tell them or give them some advice. It's very difficult for them to take that on. But the longer you are in it and the more knowledge you have, especially when you meet people like Kisik Lee, Coach Kim, whoever they are, you tend to think, well, I don't know any. I thought I knew something, but I don't know anything now. When you meet them. Where is Kisik Lee based now? Is he still in the States?
He's based he's the US coach. So he's based in America.
Right. Okay. He's based there. Okay. And of course, his English is obviously good enough, and it's
Oh yeah, it's good enough.
yeah.
I mean, it's been in English-speaking countries for a long time now, and he's articulate. He's a good speaker, and he's very to me, he comes across as quite humble. His background, so his demeanor, it's quite he is confident in what he does, but I don't find him to be aggressive or confrontational.
Right.
I've definitely met people in the archery community and elsewhere who tend to kind of beat their chest and say I'm the right one, but I don't feel like, of course, when you sign to his seminar, his workshop, of course you learn his style. That's when he pushes, but I don't find that he was, to me, that confrontational or that. So he's someone I want to like more rather than like less.
Right, excellent. Yeah, no, I hope I have the chance to either meet him or get in contact with him at some point. Okay, I'm going to pull in a couple of questions from some people who emailed me. So, number one, they said, which style of shooting has a steep learning curve personally, and which one do you enjoy more? I think we've probably maybe covered this before, but just to go over that again. So, which one has a steep learning curve for you?
Yeah, I think we cover which one I enjoy more already. It's anything that's traditional. I probably enjoy a lot more. Because personally, I saw actually more as a martial pursuit rather than a sporting pursuit.
Right.
My background is sporting, but I find the personal challenge more the martial kind.
Yeah.
Hence why, especially Asiatic archery, that's very much a martial pursuit. It's spiritual and martial. Definitely. But that's more like, I think we've mentioned it with other people where with Western cultures, you tend to modify the tool to be better, whereas with many traditional Eastern styles, it's more yourself as the archer, because you are the person responsible for casting the arrow. So that's why I find more my personal enjoyment is self-improvement. So rather than buy a better bow, I become a better person. So that's kind of my line there. But which one's a learning curve? I think all styles have a steep learning curve. Like archery is the sort of thing where it's easy to learn, but very difficult to master. And I think that's the same with every style. This is a tough question because I think the learning curve should be the same across all styles. Like the initial entry is once you get used to using the bow, then it's all about that exponential grind to become more and more confident and more consistent. And that takes a lot of time, a lot of training for every style. I think where it comes at is you have different floors and different ceilings. I think that's the way it is, right? It's not how fast you get there, but where you start from. So, for example, compound archery has a much lower floor, so more people can pick up a compound bow, and within like a month, or even within like a day, they can shoot like groupings like this.
Hit groups,
yeah, because compound, it's like you have the release aid, you have the peep sight. Of course, novices, they'll be outshot by people who've been shooting like recurve for years, but once 1 or 2 months pass and they know how to get the anchor point and the peep sights aligned and the bow is synchronized, then they can outshoot a veteran of many years. That's where I think why compound is the dominant discipline and bow type in modern competition and modern archery. One, hunting driven, so there's a big hunting market for compound, and two, compound is easy to access. More people with less physical experience or less physical fitness can pick up a bow and start shooting accurately. I think people with the I want to shoot something, I want to hit bullseyes mentality will go towards compound because it seems easy to get into. I think objectively it is because there's more factors which are done for the archer, the release aid, the peep sight, the magnified lens, and so on. So
there's a lot more things to help you.
Exactly. Whereas it's hard to master compound because when you get to competitive level, because everyone's shooting really well, 1 point drops you from first to 20th place. So that's where I think it's got a much lower floor, but also a much higher ceiling. Objectively, you shoot a lot more precisely, but the competition is a lot more intense. Whereas when you go down towards the other styles, you have Olympic recurve, you have traditional archery. They've got a higher floor, so you have to climb a lot more to get to your basics. And then you have that it's kind of like a higher floor, lower ceiling. So like someone who shoots this might be controversial, but someone who shoots instinctive will never be as good as a compound shooter. I think we can agree with that, right? Compound will always hit. Always hit that. So people who drive, it's like people shoot archery for different reasons. A perfect shot feels different. So compound, if they don't get like all X's, they're upset, right? Whereas if you hit the target, then you're doing pretty well.
You're happy.
That's what we kind of count a lot more. So the stands are different.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a style which has a steeper learning curve. I think all styles have a steeper learning curve, but the goal is different. So I think compound's going to be more, it's easy to get into. You're going to accelerate a lot sooner, but then you peak a lot sooner too. Whereas if other styles, it's a longer journey, not a steeper curve, but a longer journey with a lower ceiling, but a longer time to get there.
Absolutely. No, that's a great answer. Okay, tell us about your recent experience with Maidan Archery, your visit to Ahmed's club, and then someone asked, what is the most frustrating part about learning thumb release?
Oh, two good questions there. So my experience with Asiatic and thumb draw in general has been quite recent, because the first time, like, it's something which I wanted to learn. Like, obviously as I was doing Olympic archery and Western archery, I wanted to experience Eastern, because that's what more people, especially at the time I was doing YouTube, everyone's into like Lars Anderson and thumb draw and right shooting. So that was the trend back then. And like, I know about it, but I've never practiced it. I never had the equipment or the training, and no one could teach, this sort of thing. So even recently in Melbourne, it's like we have a few, one Chinese archer with the way of archery, with that method, and he's like one person, and there's a Kudo school, and Kudo's a thing upon itself, so it's a little different. And until Archery Ascension opened, or is opening, and there's no place to actually go to learn this sort of thing. So a lot of people, as with many people, it's all about self-discovery and kind of experimenting and figuring it out. So you buy the books, you watch the videos, you learn about it. So I only started thumb release when I was given the chance by a company, Mandarin Duck. They're sending me bows, and I said, "Hey, do you want to try the Ching bow that we have, the short bow?" And I'm like, okay, we'll try that. At the time, because my father, he's been a big a weird role model, but he's the intellectual one. He hates Olympic archery. He thinks it's too modern. Like, a lot of people hate for that reason. It's too flashy and too modern. He's always like, do Mongolian archery. Like, like, there's no positive reinforcement. Very traditional parents. So I thought, like, I should at some point honor him and shoot Mongolian, shoot thumb draw. And I did eventually, but he never gave me the praise. So, like, it's kind of a weird pursuit. But anyway, my journey with thumb draw was, like they. Exactly, typical Asian dad, never proud. So I was sent a bow, and I started learning to use thumb draw with it was this Qing style bow, and that fed the hunger. I love learning. I said before that my passion is for learning, not teaching. It's also for learning. So I'm more so learning as many skills as I can and having many pathways to follow. So I can always have a pathway and never be stagnant. So my first taste of thumb release was with Chinese bow. Then I started buying a Mongolian bow. I started looking at other bows, and again that started that snowball. So as I started learning more thumb draw, more people came to support me. So Justin Ma came to support me. I brought him on board and had a chat on the live stream. I learned more about the equipment people were using, so which manufacturers people were buying from, which bow types there were. Because like with many people, to me, a horse bow is a horse bow. I don't know what a horse bow is, but now once you spend time with people who actually shoot these styles, you learn, there's Tartar bows, there's Korean bows, there's Mongol bows, there's Bugal bows, there's Turkish bows, and I'm starting to get it now. I think that's the first challenge of learning thumb draw, is that there's no one thumb draw. Right, I think that I mean, you have different perceptions. There's like one archery. Well, there isn't. There's modern, traditional, Western, Eastern, and then you think, Eastern's all horse bows and thumb draw. Well, actually, no. There's different kinds of thumb draw. There's different styles. There's there's Arabic style, Turkish style, Chinese style, Korean style. That's the first mental challenge, or the first intellectual challenge, is to unravel, untwist those perceptions or misconceptions you have. I mean, I know people think maybe technique-wise, but I think the mental is always mental first. So mentally taking yourself away from what you think you already know. I think this is true for any art or any learning, is like put aside what you already know and look at it with an open mindset, with a new fresh slate, and to learn things from scratch. And when I went to to Archery Ascension in Melbourne and later to Maidan in Sydney. That was one thing which was I felt I was comfortable in doing, was setting aside what I already knew.
Right.
It was actually reinforced when we're doing Kudo in Footscray because most of us who were there were actual archers who were trying Kudo for the first time, and Kudo is very ceremonial, it's very spiritual.
Sure.
So we were told right away, forget what you know, and that was easy for us because we didn't know much anyway. So in terms of
that was easy.
Easy to forget that. But yeah, I think when I started experimenting with thumb draw, it was kind of like a clouded version of what I thought it was, and receiving guidance from Ahmed, from Maidan, and everyone else who was there, I learned a lot more about technique, about hatra, about the release and the principles. So like a 1 hour session, even just one with Ahmed. I've been fortunate to be with him multiple times afterwards, but even just one session with Ahmed kind of brought up a lot of the spirituality, the history, the connection with the style, but also like learning things from a person. It greatly accelerates because you end up, because when people say, can I learn archery by myself? The answer is yes, but it's very prone to having misguided pathways.
Sure.
Whereas having a teacher to guide you will accelerate what you learn and put you down the right. So yeah, that's what I think was the hardest about the thumb draw, was letting go of what you already know about Western archery, Olympic archery. When I tried to teach people thumb draw, it's about like, it's gonna be weird to you. It's gonna be the opposite. You put the arrow on the other side, you put the thumb. But once people overcome that initial "this is weird" part, then it's quite fun, and people find, oh yeah, it works quite well. I see why it's done. But I think it's like it's letting go of what you already know was the hardest part.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, with shooting, going from Mediterranean to thumb, it's kind of like using the other side of your brain now that you don't normally use because you gotta change your approach as well. And I think the point that you said of letting go is something that even in a normal archery shot, whatever type of bow you use, it's that point of release where we make that mistake or we have that hesitation. And if we can be really, truly relaxed and kind of in that zone, then it should just come naturally, but the letting go, I think, is a difficult part. So like you say, how far are those clubs from where you are? Where exactly are you based in Australia?
So I'm based in Western Melbourne. Archery Ascension is in Nunawading. So it's in Narrawarren, which is about an hour or hour and a half away. So it's quite a long drive. Well, not too far. Well, yeah. If you go there, go back to about 3 hours of your day.
I was saying to Ahmed that Australia's a massive country, so he was saying from his club to Ascension is about 3 hours. So I said, oh, it's just down the road for you.
Yeah, pretty much. And we say that in Australia, like if you drive like 20 minutes in Europe, you're in a different country. You drive 20 minutes in America, it's a different state. You drive 20 minutes in Australia, you're still in your driveway.
That's true.
I mean, it's reachable. I think like once you get used to the travel times, it's something which you don't really think about. Sure,
you just get on the road and go,
I mean, compared to my club is like literally next to where I work, which is like 10 minutes away from where I live. So I have that easy, convenient point where I can learn my own, like practice my own space. Making the effort, especially on a weekend, on a morning when but the main problem is that I coach the same time which they run, so I don't really have a chance to really go there. I want to or more often, but I haven't had the chance to do so. And of course, Ahmed and Maidan's in a completely different city, so fly there, drive there, so it's all different. But otherwise, the main thing is like it's close enough once things are going where I can go, but since the time aside can be quite challenging.
Sure. Okay, I've somewhat of a controversial question here. I thought we'd have to spice it up a bit. Lars Anderson, what are your thoughts? Does he have historical background? Are some of his methods found in historical texts, which he says they are? And generally, we're not here to bash him or whatever. I just kind of want to get your thoughts on him.
I think Lars Anderson is both the best and the worst thing to come to archery. All right, I think the best because it's definitely popularized it, no doubt about that. It's exposed archery to millions, tens of millions of people who haven't otherwise seen it. So I think in terms of exposing what archery can do, It's amazing. I think initially when he you know, he's been doing skill videos, montages for years. I think 2015 was when he went viral with his a new level of archery video, which is the big hit which everyone remembers. Before that, no one really like thought it was controversial. He was a very skilled shooter, it's very fast. He didn't really make a lot of claims about historical archery. And I think my first reaction was, hey, this is a pretty cool video. It took me like months for people to realize what the controversy was. I didn't really pay attention to what he was saying. I was just saying, well, it's really cool. So in terms of like what he does, I think that is the best thing, because he's a very good exemplar of highly skilled archery. Nobody questions skill. And people think, oh, is it fake? That's not fake. These are actual legitimate shots. So I think like he is a great exemplar of archery. The reason why I think it's the worst thing isn't him personally, but the phenomenon that he's triggered, the wave of new people. And this is one of the things that, as an online personality, as a teacher, any kind of teacher, whether you're a world teacher or just one coach, it's about perspective and what you plant in people. So if you're the sort of person who gives people, like my coach, like I said before, he tells you, look, there's no perfect shot, you're not good enough yet, but you know, you're there. It's about process. You come away with that one thing. And the one thing I came away with, which I still carry with me after 8 years of archery, is process matters. And that's true for any kind of archery.
Right.
So what I feel Lars may have gone a little wrong here isn't, there are probably things we dispute about the history and all that. But I think what people come out with is, people come out with a right kind of archery and a wrong kind of archery. I think that's the language and the mindset, because some of the claims, they're very broad claims, which aren't wrong, but they're misapplied because they're so broad. Things like, you say, archers in the past, historical archers. Yeah, the archers did this. We have the texts which show that we have, Mamluk archery, we have Arab archery, which show that these are techniques which were used. These are tricks which have been recorded. These are skill shots which people have claimed. So they have been written down. The problem is that by saying historical archery and not having a particular reference point, not being scholarly in identifying exactly which sources, when, where, how, why, people would take that and think, okay, so because he's shooting really quickly and he can like do a spinning shot through a helmet slit, therefore all archers in the past could do that. And we start kind of transplanting different realities in different places. So we have different, we juxtapose different things. So one example of broad claim is, just the general idea of the right side being a better side. People say, oh, archers in the past used the right side. And that's true. We all know that. That's a basic bit of knowledge. We say, look, half the world does that. Most of the world does that, in fact. But it kind of, it drives the narrative. People used to think only Robin Hood was correct. Only English archery I should call. That's the popular Western mindset. So now you've got it's completely flipped around. Now it's implying, and he never says this, by the way. I don't want to blame Lars for this, but the viewers take away that because
an assumption
Hollywood archery is wrong, therefore what he does is right. So everyone who shoots on the left side is doing it wrong. And that was the initial wave of reactions to his video was, wow, that means all correct archery must be on the right side. I've definitely seen videos from people who do, for example, I'll watch someone play a computer game and there's a character using a compound bow and he's theorizing, well, what if we have the arrow on the right side of the compound bow and we speech it like real archery, like Lars Anderson does? And I think, well, that's the kind of mentality which represents what people have taken away. And I think that's what we need to be aware of when we're talking about history, and it's kind of why I'm very pedantic. I mean, all history is pedantic in some way, but you have to frame the discussion very clearly. Is this specific to a particular time and place? Because as we all know, the Turkish archery is uniquely Turkish archery. You don't really use Turkish principles in English longbow when you're shooting like 180-pound war bows. They're very different things. Horseback archery is different. Flight archery is different. Japanese archery is different. So Japanese archery didn't really speed shoot. They didn't really have shower shooting the same way as Turkish archery does. English archery didn't shoot as quickly as Arab archery does. And that's why I think we've exposed archery to a massive audience. But it's a very cloudy and tangled thing. And it's all things. As a teacher, my responsibility, my students, to make sure they come out with the clearest understanding as possible. Untangle the misconceptions, clarify understanding. And that's what I feel I do as a teacher and as a teacher on YouTube. Why Lars has been controversial is that he's presented the most entertaining, high impact, highly visual demonstration, but the narrative alongside that has been mixed up. So vague claims, he's kind of mixing things together, and it does get things wrong. For example, like one thing which triggered me at the time, I was only doing Olympic archery. He made this claim where historically archers shot with both eyes open, which is true. They shot with both eyes open. So do we. We also shoot both eyes open. But he had this demonstration where he had the bow lined up with one eye and he pulled it back really badly.
Right.
And I think that's what this is what in the end, this to summarize is it's very sensationalized.
Right.
It's obviously there to trigger reaction, and I think I've read interviews or discussions where he has intentionally played up some of the differences for a greater impact on the audience. So there's a bit of disingenuous motivation. So by making one style look wrong and bad, he makes other styles look better. And I think that's where the controversy really is. If you look at it objectively, look, both styles shoot with both eyes open. Both styles use both hands to an extent. If you look, Kisik Lee explained to me, like, your follow through is a simultaneous release of the front hand and the rear hand. And I went, hang on, that's katara. That's kind of like a similar principle to katara. Just kind of like, I was sitting there, I'm thinking, wait, I've heard this before.
It sounds familiar.
Exactly. That's exactly what we do. So,
but
the principles are the same, and like the more you dig into it, the more there are similarities. Whereas what the effect of Lars's video, not Lars, I won't say it, not Lars himself, because he's been very modest. Like, when he's been wrong, he retracts things. He changes his mind. He knows he's sensationalizing, so he's doing his own thing there. And more recently, he's really been more skill demonstrations. I think at the feedback, and he's been less bold about making claims, although he's still making claims.
Sure.
There's more focus on the skills rather than the history. But I think the point was that we've been driving more differences rather than similarities. That's the mindset which people have got into. And because they've seen someone who shoots really, really, really well, it's kind of like the saying, might is right. If you are correct, then you prove it. You outshoot him. You fight him a duel. That's all archery is. It's become very antagonistic and kind of like you prove it by being better than him. It's like,
it's as if he's become the standard, and now everyone's got to kind of come up to that standard, which is just not
exactly
reality.
And this affects all styles. Like, it doesn't matter if you're Olympic style or a different Asiatic style or traditional style. Like, everybody in some ways it's been affected positively from the exposure, but also negatively, I think, where people come in with more misconceptions which we have to untangle. And like I said, like the hardest thing is people who perhaps know the least might feel empowered to go, all right, I've seen this person do it, therefore teach me how to do it. So, you can, but understand that, what we're doing here is very much exhibition archery. In real life, you wouldn't do around the corner shots and spinning shots and acrobatics. That's a very high level skill. And look, some of them are literally things like turning arrows. Like, if you read Arrow of Archery, actually there's a chapter saying how to turn your arrow. And that's like, well, you get an arrow with a lead point, and you have like a fletch in the front, and then you shoot it towards the wind, and it'll come back towards you. I remember reading it's like, to confuse your adversary, you shoot the arrow around him, and then when it's confused, you shoot him. It's such a movie thing. You see like the Green Arrow doing this, and people say, "Oh, in battle you can spin an arrow around the corner and shoot someone behind the walls." Actually, no, it's a trick shot. Like, you don't have the arrow is literally pointless. It's a trick arrow. You must put a tiny boxing glove in the arrow and just shoot it towards it instead. So it's amazing, by the way. It's great to explore this because it gives us a chance to access some of the feats which historical archers could do. All right, we don't do it these days. It's more like streamlined, but the stunts and feats of historical archers are definitely there. But the nuances was like, where do we apply it? Which of these skills are practical skills?
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, how much of what Lars is doing is actually teachable? I mean, we can't argue with his personal skill of archery. I mean, no one can deny that. But how repeatable is that? I mean, I don't see people coming to an archery range and learning a beginner's archery course or whatever, and then you start pulling out some of these stunts that Lars is doing, because it takes like a lifetime to get to that level. It's just I don't think it's any great to look at. Like you say, it's really, it's great for the eyes and it brings a lot of people into archery. But how much of it can you realistically do? I question that. I'm not sure.
And the other thing too is how much of it is Lars. One of the things I find controversial when people would put comments and argue with me is that like they don't understand exactly what Lars does, because the base level is, well, you're wrong because you don't shoot on the right side. Well, Lars shoots on the right side, yes, but so does everybody else. Like we all shoot the right side, so people can't distinguish thumb draw, or because people who don't know archery, they just look at the result, not the process.
Right,
so to see right side's faster, yes, but most people can shoot on the right side. It's not hard. It's not exclusive. Like you can learn thumb draw in like an hour or in a half an hour. Someone can teach you to do thumb draw. You thumb draw. It's not hard. It's not like you suddenly become an accurate speed shooter by shooting thumb draw. Thumb draw is just a technique.
Yes.
Things like speed shooting and shower shooting, well, there are multiple techniques. It's not unique to Lars. Now, what's unique about him is his application of the techniques. So the way he does it in his environment, in his settings and scenarios, the speed at which he does it, but also his own spin. So I think he's the fastest method he does is like a assassin or a Slavic draw with a light bow with half draws. So to get the speed out, he goes pew, 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 half draws with Slavic. So it's very, very fast, but that's not necessarily effective practical archery, because of course, I think taken out of this, people think that practical archery, of course, sport archery isn't practical. We make it very clear. You're shooting points on a bullseye. That's not practical. That's just sport. That's for an activity people do to pursue as a sport. But I think historically, why don't we have these courses? We have like the SAS Kill House, where you walk in and you shoot arrows, different dummies and all that. Why don't we do that? Because I think arguably historically, the only reason why you would do that is if you're doing horseback archery. That's what you would need. And you would know this too. Like you need to load quickly. You would need to shoot instinctively with a time limit, because just speeding on track on a horse. That would be the historical version of practical archery. Whereas ground archery, you don't run around and jump around and spin around and shoot things like that. It might be a skill you might show off with, but arguably it's not something that's a practical skill. It might reflect practical skills, but in itself isn't something which is practical. So that's why we don't really teach it, because we don't really see the application of it towards the end, whether in a sporting environment or a historical horse archery environment. The skills are there, the baseline, the foundation skills are actually the same. And that's what I said before. Many of the things which he does aren't unique to him. It's the way he does it which is unique to him.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So you mentioned horse archery. Is that something that's on your bucket list?
Unfortunately, also four things, I want to learn it. But I don't have a horse, can't ride a horse, can't find a place which has a horse. Again, with Archery Ascension opening up, they've got opportunities there. So perhaps people who go there can learn how to do it. But I myself, if I could, I would. But my situation is mostly restricted from doing so. Sure,
I think it's the case with a lot of people. If you don't have easy access to a horse, either your own horse or you haven't got the money to go riding and stuff, it's just a bit of a dead end. But anyway, all right, it's been excellent. We're just going to wrap up with a couple of quick fire questions for you, Nusensei. It's been great speaking to you. And these are questions that I give to everyone, and it's just interesting to get their take on different things. So laminate, and if we're just talking about traditional bows here, you've probably heard this, laminate or composite bow?
I was waiting for this one. But my problem is I haven't shot a proper composite bow. So I've only shot laminate bows, so I can't compare really. So I guess laminate's my answer. Laminate,
okay. I mean, with composite, from what I've been hearing from different people I've been speaking to, is that they're only kind of really effective at higher poundages and for maybe shooting further distances. But anything under 50, 60 pounds is probably the laminate bow is probably takes
I would agree with that.
There was a question maybe more for horse archers about the favorite track to shoot on. So we'll maybe skip that one, unless you've been running on different tracks or something.
Yeah, with a huge like Olympic bow with stabilized, it's kind of like riding by.
Exactly.
No, can't really say that.
Okay, wood or carbon arrows?
Carbon, a bit of bias because I'm a modern archer, but look, I turn from my historical experience, right? So after shooting at Maidan and at Archery Ascension, because a lot of practice you do, like tall bow practice, is like close distance, and you really smash wooden arrows. So wooden arrows has that historical vibe to it. If you're doing historical competition, then wood is obviously the preferred one because that's what you're supposed to be using. But I've heard other people say, like, if you've got like a fiberglass bow and you've got like wooden arrow, what's the point? Must well, like, it's the arrow. Is it that important? If it's gonna help streamline and make things easier. But for me, carbon. One, it's especially now, it's easy and often very cheap to get carbon arrows.
Yeah.
Two, they are much more consistent. So for learning and practice, definitely carbon. And three, if you're going to do a lot of close range target practice, Torba, then you'll break fewer arrows of carbon. I mean, carbon will shatter once you hit like a rock or something, a hard object. But look, like we said before, Torba's like what, 1, 2, 3 meters away. That acceleration, that close range. I went to Archery essentially with like 12 wooden arrows, and I think Brother Omar looked at me, are you sure about this? I'm like, no, I shoot wooden. And I came up with like 3 arrows. I'm like, okay, I see what they use carbon, because I had carbon in my car, but they're too short for my my bow, for my draw length. So yeah, definitely carbon. First I just practice. More durable, easy to get, more consistent.
Yeah. Normally when we break an arrow, whether it be carbon or wood, and we always say, may they rest in peace, because it's we have to bury them. We got to do funeral rites and everything. You know, it's quite a painful thing, because you know, for archers, their arrows are like their kids or something. It's more important than their family, especially if you've got expensive carbon arrows and you break it. It's like, you know. So
especially the perception of the whole like Robin Hood thing, where you hit the arrow, the back of the arrow. People think, oh, it's so cool. You see us all like, oh, no, there's 100. You know,
it's just broken the bank. Okay, your favorite, again, traditional bows. Your favorite bow that you've shot or that you like to shoot?
Fortunately, I've shot many bows. So the one I've had for a while, which I always want to go back to, is the Mariner bows. I have the Mariner Ming Moon Chinese bow. Fantastic bow. Looks great. But the feeling, plus it's all my heaviest bow. It's a 54-pound bow. I don't shoot heavy bows, but that's my kind of my first. It's the bows are just good. It's the stories with them, and like my Mariner was my first real bows. I have fiberglass bows sent to me. The first bow that I bought, which I wanted to buy just for myself, and because I bought it through Batan Archery in Europe, and he's connected with Justin Ma, and Justin Ma got in touch with me, and Vermont Archery got in touch with me. So it's more the connections which I have with people. So I've got that bow. I've shot it like 4 times. That's like a dream bow. So smooth, great feeling, the good vibrations. That's my favorite bow as it is. I've got a close second runner-up, and that is Simon's Raptor. Because Simon's a fairly new bow maker. He's based in the Netherlands, and I've interviewed him recently. His bow is not historical, because he makes his own kind of modern twist based on historical designs. But that bow is such a high performer. Like, mine's a 4 to 5 pound bow, but it shoots like a 50-pound bow. It feels so fast. I think that's something which needs more exposure. I mean, people will do one kind of archery, and they'll pick that kind of bow. So you do Turkish archery, shoot Turkish bow. That's kind of how people connect things. This is not a Turkish bow. It's not a Tatar bow. It's just a bow. It's an Asiatic style bow, but it combines like modern performance with historical design, and it just feels wonderful. Plus, it's got the softest leather grip. So this is so nice, because usually if it's nice, you have a very tight grip. You've got blisters. I'm sure you all have the blisters over here, or we all have calluses right there, right? So we have modern archery, the callus on the thumb. That's where most have that callus. Yeah. If Eastern archery, it's these 2 fingers right there. Everybody has this. So I think I'm a real archer. I'm not faking. I can prove it. See my blisters there, right? Yeah. So that's legit. So those are my 2 favorites, is the Mariner Moon, which I don't shoot as often as the Raptor. But in terms of a traditional bow that's which historical basis, the Mariner Ming, but the Raptor is a high performer. I have a 3rd favorite, that's the Vei Sipahi, but it comes from Ahmed, because again, it's the stories around it. Ahmed, he's always supplier for Vei bows. I shot his Vei bow. So again, I think a lot of my favorites have the stories around them rather than the bow itself. Which is quite a different take on archery, but I think in our archery journey, while we are individuals, we're not alone. I think when we share our journey with other people, that's where we come around next. And actually, side topic, but one of the things I want to make one day is my favorite archery shirts. Because I collect shirts and run. I got lots of MOBA shirts. So people send me shirts from the clubs. And so I'm wearing a shirt right now that's been donated. But I like different designs, the flashy colors, good designs, original takes. But my favorite shirt, I think, is going to be the Maidan archery shirt, because one, the shirt itself is a nice design. The logo is nice. It's a nice color. It's quite comfortable too. Good material. I mean, I see like Artwork wear every single time. You saw it in the video when he was interviewed.
He lives in his shirts.
He lives in it. Yeah, I've stayed with his place like a few times. That's all he wears. I'm sure he has like one shirt which he wears every single time. But like it was a gift to me, and not only do I like wear, I'll wear all the time at home too now. I go to the club, I wear it here. It's so comfortable.
Right.
But he's still like making fun of all the shit. Oh, well, what's the polyester? That's gonna be cotton. That's the proper material. He said that, and when after I wore it, I'm like, yeah, you're right. Actually, I don't want to take it off now. And but more importantly, it's a gift from him, and the connection we have with each other is kind of what brings out that value a lot more. So I think my signature bow is the same thing. I mean, I've got lots of fancy bows, but if somebody just sends you, hey, just review this, it's like, and it's a nice bow, but it's more like this bow represents a journey, represents someone's passion.
Absolutely.
Then I feel a close connection. It's like factory machine made, and it's handmade. And
there's more sentimental value there, right?
Exactly.
Excellent. Okay, last question. If you theoretically able to travel to a different time zone in the past, whatever, and in terms of archery, what would be your favorite time to go back to?
I have two, perhaps. One because I'm just curious, and one because it's more culturally tied. The curious one is medieval Europe, Asian core, so English archery. Because there are a lot of things we've lost. Because the funny thing with Eastern archery, it's actually been quite well documented. We have more sources in more languages from all the time periods. So we have Gao Ying and Chinese archery and Ming archery. We have a lot of Korean sources and Japanese sources based on Gao Ying. And of course, we have Mamluk archery, Saracen archery. Those extend back to around the 1300s. So we've actually got quite a good amount of detail of maybe that the prime, the peak of historical archery is the most technique, the most technology advanced composite bows and warfare would have been this period. So we have much more sources, far more sources on Eastern archery. But European archery, despite everyone knows what it is, no one's written it down. All right, so like that wasn't as important. There's a lot to say about the cultural impact of who does archery. You know, there's more written sources and more scholarly works on Eastern archery, but Western archery is more of a peasant thing. So you know, people say, oh, everyone does it. So no one wrote it down. You know, when it came to like the bows, oh, we're hungry, we'll burn the bow because the bow's useless now. So there's not much like record of what's left over. So
true.
As a matter of curiosity, I would love to go back to the English times and experience English archery. You know, one, to know what they used, how they used it, and what the what the reputation was. Because what we have now is like propaganda, basically. It's like, oh yeah, English archers were the best archers, and even like 100 years afterwards, when they started using gunpowder and firearms, all the writers from like Louis Napoleon to the Benjamin Franklin, they're like, oh yeah, archers shoot really quickly and really accurately. It's like, well, are you writing this because you're romanticizing historical archery? So to know what it's really like, not necessarily the fighting war, to know what it's really like, I have to visit European archery and experience that. But personally, definitely Chinese archery. I think because one, it's close to my own cultural background, but two, like Chinese archery is very much ingrained into our society. It's ingrained into its people. It's ingrained into philosophy. You know, Confucian philosophy features archery. Your examinations become officials based on archery. So just to see, I mean, one, the society at the time is much more interesting to me because, like, I think, especially because a lot of history is westernized, we see Eastern cultures that's kind of like crude, barbaric, simplified. You have like, oh, there's the emperor and there's everybody else. But I think that to live in society back then would have been very interesting. But also especially for the archery side, like because archery is so much more ingrained in Eastern cultures, I would love to experience how someone like Gao Ying would have experienced archery and learn from everything he's observed and have that embedded as part of my lifestyle.
Excellent. That's amazing. Excellent. David, it's been a real pleasure to speak with you. I appreciate your time. I know you're a super busy guy. You're probably going to do another 3 videos or something today.
Yeah.
We'll see them come out in the next couple of days or something. But no, the content you produce is great. It's a great high level. It's a great resource. We appreciate your channel, and we're going to try and drive as many people as we can towards that. You know, it was good to finally speak to you kind of face to face and know a bit more about your background. And I do hope that, you know, just from the little time that we've had together, I do see you as a good kind of flag bearer and a good representative for for not just modern archery, traditional archery, and just archery generally as a sport and as a movement today. So, you know, I hope that you go on to bigger and better things, and we're going to definitely stay in touch. And either we do a part 2 or we'll meet somewhere down the line, hopefully. But we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, it's been an absolute pleasure. And of course, you know, well, whichever archery you do, enjoy your archery. Every pathway is unique. Every pathway is special. So, like, don't be the sort of person who thinks, oh, I'm doing one kind of archery. Archery is a working family. You meet new people. It's been a pleasure meeting you as well. Especially in recent times, I've met so many people from different walks of life, different kinds of archery. It's been a learning experience for me as well. You know, I'm a teacher. I'm not the teacher. Everyone can be the teacher as well. So hopefully, you know, when you enjoy your passion of archery, you can share it with other people.
Excellent. That's great. That's a great way to end off. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. We'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Bye.